kia ora koutou, tēnā tātou i ngā waka huri noa i te motu nei te mihi kia koutou katoa. Oti rā ki a koe, kia kōroa Judy, rawa ko Stephen, ki ngā kaumoana katoa o tēnei kaupapa i tō koutou whakatere i te kaupapa nei kanui te mihi. Ko wai tēnei he uri tēnei no kaitahu, ko taku taha ukai pō, he Pāke anō ingarangi, ko taku taha uri tārewa e hiki ho hau no rua hiki, ko Alice Diamond tōku ingoa. And we're super excited to have you all here. I must say it's a little intimidating seeing everyone's job titles and what you do and where you're coming from. So hopefully we can live up to the hype and give you a good experience today in terms of talking about Te Korekoreka. And I have FOMO because really I just now want to be able to talk to all of you about your mahi. So awesome to connect and be here to be able to share a bit about what we do. So a little bit about what's going to happen. So we're going to talk for maybe around half an hour about the kind of origins of Te Korekoreka, where it came from, what we use it for, how we apply it to our mahi and how possibly you can. And then we're going to give you a chance to actually use the tool in kind of its simplest format, in its 20-minute format, which we'll use a mural board for that. So we'll be a little bit interactive. As Judy said, if you haven't already, please introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to, we'd love to see your wonderful faces with your cameras on as well. And I will pass it over to Sam, who will introduce himself.
Yeah, kia ora Alice, tēnā koutou katoa, ko ai au, he uri no kaitahu, Kāti Māmoe, Waitaha, Moriori me Ngāti Tōrangatira, ko Sam Wixon, tōku ingoa. Yeah, kia ora koutou, my name's Sam. I whakapapa to everywhere that isn't the North Island, so Ngāti Tō ki Waido, just outside Blenheim, of course Ngaitahu, and whakapapa largely down to the south, to Rakiura and Bluff, and then I also have hokopapa to Te Kohu, to the Chatham Islands, as being Moriori. So yeah, kia ora, really glad to be here and super excited to share with you guys more about Te Korekoreka. But before we swing into Te Korekoreka, we thought it'd be a great place to start to sort of intro you in to talk about who we are as Tokona Te Raki. And we find the best way to sort of tell that story is to start off by talking about our name, Tokona Te Raki, and the whakapapa of that. So like what we'll begin to discuss with Te Korekoreka, pūrākau play a big part in our organisation, and it's from a version of our Ngaitahu creation pūrākau that our name Tokona Te Raki came. So unlike some other versions of the sort of Raki and Papa story, down here in the south, Tangaroa was not a child of Rangi and Papa, but rather was the first partner of Papa Tuanuku. And so Takaroa and Papa Tuanuku had been having children together, and Takaroa left to go bury the whenua, or the placenta, of some of their children. And while he left, Raki, being an opportunist, decided to swoop in and started to also have children with Papa Tuanuku. And as you would guess, on his return, Takaroa was not particularly happy with what was going on, and so began to get into a big battle with Raki, and ultimately left Raki injured and laying atop Papa Tuanuku. Now, in that state, Papa Tuanuku and Raki continued to have children, but they were stuck together in this really confined space, and what that meant was the descendants, their children who they were having, were being born into a world that meant they were unwell and sick. And knowing that being in this unwell, unhealthy world was not something that they wanted for their children, Raki asked some of his children to go about raising him to the heavens, the idea being that in separating Raki and Papa, light and life would emerge. And so in particular, Tāne, one of our atua, he used his tokotoko, called toko maunga, as well as the tokotoko of a sibling called Paia, which were called Rua Tipua and Rua Tawhito. And with these three tokotoko, lifted raki up off papa tuanuku and into the heavens. And it's from this change that we get our name Tokona Te Raki. So Tokona Te Raki kia tū, Tokona Te Raki kia ora. And why that name's so important to us is thinking about what Raki and Tāne were doing. They were changing the circumstances for the generations that were to come. And at Tokona Te Raki, that's what we aim to do. We aim to raise the ceilings of possibility and create the conditions for new light and potential to emerge. And so if you think, we're in a systems change webinar series, who are the OGs of systems change? Well, for us, they're right there in our whakapapa, Raki and Tāne. They were the first systems change practitioners, changing the circumstances for generations to come. And so maybe more practically, what does that mean for us? Well, we describe ourselves as Māori future makers. And what does that mean? It means that we work to change the circumstances for Māori and create a future that is going to serve us. So we use social innovation tools with the goal of achieving equity in education, employment, and income for all Māori within the Kaitahu Takiwā and beyond. And practically for us, we look at systems and how we can go about unweaving our broken systems. So, Raki and Papa stuck together, and how we can go about creating the change that's needed for our descendants and generations to come to thrive. So, separating our Raki and Papa and creating that new world. And so the ultimate goal for us is about creating a world where all Māori are inspired by their futures, confident in their culture, and prosperous in their careers. And in doing so, are succeeding as Māori. And a particular important piece for us at Tokona Te Raki is about ensuring that rangatahi are at the heart of systems change. And that's a really important piece, thinking about how we can set up our next generations to come to be the leaders of that long-term transformation. But if we quickly jump back to our pūrākau and think about Tāne, he didn't just go about creating the systems change by himself. He actually used tools. He used toko to create that change. And so for us at Tokona Te Raki, a really important question to ask ourselves is, what are our toko? What are we going to use as tools to help us create change? And for us, that's where Te Korekoreka came into the picture.
Halfway. So before we kick into talking a little bit more about Te Korekoreka, we wanted to hear from you in terms of what experience you've had with Te Korekoreka so far. So if you could please put in the chat whether you're a 1, so first time you've ever heard about Te Korekoreka, or maybe you're all the way through to a 4, being that you've been part of a training or workshop using Te Korekoreka before. We would love to hear. Cool, good to see some familiar faces, and nice to have some people who are completely new to this as well. So when we start to talk about Te Korekoreka, we always start by saying Te Korekoreka is a kawa for Māori future making. What do we mean by that? We mean that it is just a set of processes, protocols, or practices to guide how we do our work, how we interact and collaborate with others. What's future making? Well, for us, it's really just about trying to make the future better for Māori, helping to support how we imagine and navigate towards a better future. When we started doing this work at Tokona Te Raki, we realized, like Sam said, that we needed to identify what our toko were. So what are the things that are going to help us to do our work? And we quickly identified that we needed a kawa similar to how you would have a kawa when you say go to the marae. So when you go to the marae, it's really clear what the processes and protocols to guide that interaction are. So we wanted to have a really clear idea of what's the way that we expect, and we will what process we will follow to be able to do our future making work. So our whānau came together and they had wānanga around what could be a tool to help us to create that transformation. And they wanted a tool that wasn't just about making small improvements or tinkering with the current system. And instead, they wanted something that was going to aim for radical transformation, because the future we want for Māori is radically different to the one we have right now. So we're going to hear from some of those people now. So we have a quick video. We have Dr. Hannah O'Regan and Dr. Iruira Tarina, who are two of our iwi mātanga, and they are going to talk a little bit about the origins of Te Korekoreka, including the manuscript that Te Korekoreka is based on, and some of the kind of conceptual and practical applications of the tool. So we'll kick into that now.
Te kawa o Te Korekoreka is based on a famous karakia by one of our kaitahu, Tipuna and Tohuka Mateaha Tiramorehu. In 1849, he recorded in this karakia, Kei a te pō, 4 realms: Te Aotearoa, the day; Te Kore, the nothingness; Te pō, the darkness; and Te Aomarama, the new day. Te Korekoreka was crafted from our kaitahu creation story. It is a great process to help whānau, teams, organisations, anyone who's wanting to evolve a new way of doing things. The 4 realms of Te Korekoreka help you experience Indigenous knowledge within a new frame of reference.
In developing Te Korekoreka, we started by studying this powerful karakia, by considering each of the realms independently, and then understanding how they interrelated to each other. We explored the space between each of these realms so we could better understand the transitions between them. And finally, we considered the realms as one complete cyclical system. And it's from this wānaka that Te Korekoreka emerged.
Te Korekoreka is a way for us to connect with our mātauraka of our tipuna and to reclaim the future-making mindsets of our tipuna. It seeks to give purpose to our current knowledge and to help us navigate into the future.
As well as being a powerful conceptual framework, Te Korekoreka is also a practical guide to help us in our future-making mahi. Each realm has its own kaupapa and tikanga to help guide us in maximising the potential from that realm. This helps us be more aware of what realm we might currently be in, and helps us to anticipate what are the changes we might need to make to move forward. As we move through the kawa, we gain more insight and understanding.
To think intergenerationally requires us to think beyond ourselves, beyond the people that we know, beyond our time. It requires us to think into the future and to consider the legacy that we bequeath to the future generations, to our tamariki, to our mokopuna. Because it is intergenerational, it also means that we need to think about the legacy we have inherited from our tipuna. That legacy encapsulates our tikanga, our whakaaro, our belief systems, our understanding of who we are as a people. That legacy has shaped who we are, and in turn, it is the legacy that we pass down to those future generations to help shape their understanding of who they are. It is our language, it is our culture, it is our identity, it is our place, it is our future.
Future making is not new to Māori. The words we use to describe this process may be new, but the concepts and wisdom are not. It takes courage to imagine a new future, to learn from your past, to understand your present, and to commit to a deliberate course of action to move you from your current reality to a better one. Thank you for taking this journey with us through Te Korekoreka. We hope it gives you more insight in terms of our kawa and our vision. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Awesome. So as they spoke about in the video, Te Korekoreka is really a way for us to reconnect with our mātauraka kaitahu and our Indigenous knowledge systems to reclaim that future-making mindset of our ancestors and use it to navigate towards a better future. And we think this is important because we don't think it's credible anymore to just continue to use imported frameworks and tools to fix what are imported broken systems. So we want to start to co-create this new way of moving towards a better future that works for everyone. As they introduced within the video, Te Korekoreka is made up by these 4 realms, and these 4 realms represent how our tupuna understood time and creation. So the 4 realms are Te Aotearoa, Te Kore, Te Po, and Te Marama. And we'll hear from Sam soon, who'll talk a little bit more about the realms. But I just want to talk about this concept of time and creation. So when our tupuna, when our tupuna were speaking with European ethnographers, when they wrote down our understanding of time, those European ethnographers recorded our history and viewed it through their own cultural lens. So they viewed it, therefore, in a linear fashion. So they assumed that this kind of understanding of time and creation was very similar to their understanding of time and creation, which was that it started with this sort of genesis of a big bang, and then we moved forward through space and time. But actually, the way that our ancestors understood creation was that it was cyclical, and that past, present, and future are actually interconnected. And at any one time, we can be moving through these different cycles of time and creation, and we can actually tap into those realms at different times. So we're moving from chaos to order, or from darkness to light, or from past to future, but all of those realms are connected. So this kind of continuous cosmic movement of time and creation is happening. It has no restrictions, and therefore the past is both central to and shapes the future. So this kind of interconnection is what we want to reiterate when we're talking about Te Korekoreka. So not only do we make progress moving into the future by designing new ways, but we also draw on that legacy that our ancestors left behind. We build on the whakapapa of the past and all the strengths and lessons of the past to move us into the future. And that's really where the practical application of Te Korekoreka comes in, because when we do our future making work, we therefore know that we always must look back to honour the work of our ancestors, the work of those who came before us, to consider how we can work with that and then create a future that will benefit generations to come. So that connection between past, present, and future is always present. Sam's now going to talk a little bit about how the manuscript that led us to this mātauranga.
Yeah, so as Alice mentioned there, the understanding of time from our tupuna was cyclical, that you were constantly moving in the cycle of states and spaces. And so what we're going to do next is play a video that talks through this karakia that we've been referencing. And what I want you to do while you're watching this video of the karakia is to keep an eye out for these words, Te Aotearoa, Te Kore, Te Po, and Te Marama, and consider the cycle that's going on within this karakia as they come up.
Kaia te pō, te timata taka mai o te waiata taka mai o te atua. Nā te pō ko te ao. Nā te ao ko te ao marama. Nā te ao marama ko te ao tūroa. Nā te ao tūroa ko te kore te whiwhia. Nā te kore te whiwhia ko te kore te rāwea. Nā te kore te rāwea ko te kore te tā maua. Nā te kore te tā maua ko te kore matua. Nā te kore matua ko te māku. Ka moi a māhura nui a te a ka puta ko raki. Ka moi a pokoharu a te pō ka puta ko auraki. Ko raka māmao, tāna ko tā whiri mātea. Ko te aita ko te takata ki te whai ao ki te ao marama. Ki te ao tūroa e tūnei. Ti hei Māori o rā.
So hopefully, as you will have heard through that karakia, there is a constant cycle going on between these different realms that we've talked about. And so as you can see here in the text, it starts in Te Pō, Kaya Te Pō, Te Tīmatataka mai o te waiatataka mai o te atua. That Te Pō was the starting place from which the atua and the world were sung into being. And this cycle that existed from starting in Te Pō into Te Ao Marama, Te Ao Tūroa, then we enter these phases of Te Kore. And from Te Kore, we head into Te Pō as our atua start to be born. And from Te Pō, we shift to Te Ao Marama again. So ki te whaiao, ki te ao marama. But we then go back to ki te ao tūroa e tūnei. And as you will have seen, if you then go back up to the top, you'll see that Te ao tūroa does head again into Te Kore. So it is a very cyclical understanding of time. And so our tupuna were hugely connected to and had a huge understanding of the world around them. And that's what shaped this understanding. And I'll get to this a bit later, but when we were looking for a creative process, it was really natural to look to our story of creation. And I think it was very telling within this creation pūrākau that it was cyclical, that it involved iteration, and that sometimes things will be created and eventually they won't be fit for purpose anymore, and we'll have to go through another process of recreation for what we're working on. And so starting with our first realm, we talk about being Te Ao Tūroa. Te Ao Tūroa means sort of literally the long-standing world. And so when we talk about Te Ao Tūroa, we're referring a world which has been in existence for a long time, and we're talking about things which are starting to get old and starting to head towards a sort of death or process of decay. And so Te Ao Tūroa to us is talking about the current state, and it's where we see things not being fit for purpose and sort of tensions existing. And it's from Te Ao Tūroa in our process that we shift through to Te Kore. Te Kore talks about a void of nothingness, but within nothingness, we believe there's also limitless potential. For us, Te Kore is a space of deep reflection and insight. So within Te Ao Tūroa, we may be looking at sort of the data and statistics and the tangible things, but Te Kore is about understanding a deeper sense of purpose and why. It's a really reflective space. And you could think of Te Kore like that period in your sleep where you're sort of unconscious and your body is just healing and regenerating. And that's how we feel Te Kore manifests when we are in that realm. And naturally, if we're talking about sleep, we talk about Te Pō, which often is described as the nighttime, but also we talk about it being the space of darkness. So for us, Te Pō is our space of innovation and imagination. So if we think of Te Kore as that unconscious part of our sleep where we're regenerating and healing, Te Pō is that part of our sleep where we're dreaming. And so within that space, we're able to dream without any boundaries or anything in the way. So for us, Te Pō is that space of making and imagining and designing. And it's where we sort of draw on our understanding of the current state, our deeper understanding of the past, and begin to imagine what a new future might look like. And naturally, we want to leave the space of imagination and start to turn things into action and reality. And that takes us into Te Ao Marama, which Te Ao Marama means the world of light and life. And so in Te Pō, we're dreaming, while in Te Ao Marama, we're turning our dreams into reality. And so for us, Te Ao Marama is about implementing what we're working on and what we've imagined and starting to celebrate those things that are going on. And so if we sort of zoom out and look at the bigger cycle of Te Korekoreka, you can see that there is a sort of natural flow that goes between these states, that once we've created something new, eventually, as I mentioned, it will no longer be fit for purpose, and we'll have to go through this cycle again. And our tupuna were really, really in tune with our environment and with the natural processes that existed. And actually, maybe a better way to describe our creation pūrākau is actually the birthing of the universe. So if you are familiar with some of these kupu and familiar with the way that as Māori we talk about life and death, you'll notice that things like te pō, which we often talk about being related to the whare tangata and the place in which the baby is being developed, that we say ki te whaia o ki te ao marama, and we welcome this new life into this world. And so there's a really nuanced understanding of these cycles of life and death, and that manifests in the way they communicated creation. Part of this as well is with oral tradition, our tupuna were passing on generations upon generations of understanding and knowledge of the environment through stories in a way that people were able to sort of grasp an understanding of and really be able to retell. And I think for us, we find that's really important in Te Korekoreka, is being able to tell the story of this process of creation and creativity. And I'll now pass over to Alice, and we're going to head into a bit of a practical application and activity for our kawa.
Awesome. Before we head into the mural, we just wanted to acknowledge that obviously, so this, even though we have drawn the way that we are applying Te Korekoreka from our tupuna manuscript, so from Mātiaha Te Morihu's manuscript, this mātauranga isn't unique necessarily to Kaitahu or unique to Māori or even unique to Pacific people. It is knowledge that can be seen throughout different pūrākau and whakaaro all over the world. So we know that you may have your own understanding of these realms and these concepts, and I just want to mihi to those and acknowledge those. And if you do have any understanding that you would, or offerings that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear them from in the chat. And every time we do this, we also learn more from you. So we just want to open that space up if anyone does want to put anything in the chat. Otherwise, Stephen is going to drop our mural link in now. And I will ask that you all enter the mural and we can start to use that. So as we said, we want you to give you a chance to kind of experience using Te Korekoreka, and we're going to do this in the most simple format, which we find is to use it as a personal reflection tool. So what we want you to do is we want you to think about something in your lives that you may want to gain greater understanding about. So it could be a project you're working on, or a kaupapa, or maybe it's just a whānau situation. It can be anything, probably something you've been doing for a little bit of time that you just might be a little bit stuck on, and you want to kind of gain this new understanding about, and you're going to use that thing, that kaupapa, as a way to move through the reflection. So, kapai. So welcome to Te Korekoreka, our kawa for Māori future making, and we start in Te Ao Tūroa. So our first realm is Te Ao Tūroa, the realm of knowing, doing, and reviewing. And Te Ao Tūroa, like Sam said, is our current state, our everyday. And it's a realm that's really tangible. We can usually see it, we can touch it, and we can measure it. But it's sometimes also a little bit unconscious, and it involves repetition of similar actions. So what we want you to do now is grab a post-it note, and we want you to note on just one post-it note the current situation with the thing that you're going to be reflecting on. So it could be some of the actions that are going on, or maybe the actions that are being planned, as well as any context that you think is relevant to the situation, such as it is funded by X and needs to be completed by a date in the future. So anything you feel like is contextually important, but we just want you to kind of start to brainstorm those key things about the current situation with your project. So what's going on, what actions are currently being planned or taken, Try naming kind of specifics in terms of events or dates. And I'll give you a little moment to do that. And if you need help with the prompt, it's also at the top of the page there. Okay. So now it is time for us to move you from Te Aotearoa to Te Kore. So Sam is going to help facilitate that movement now to our transition space. So what we find with Te Korekoreka is that it's really important to pay careful attention to the transitions between the different realms. So each transition kind of needs a different mindset in order to be able to kind of make that move from one to the next. And we find in Te Aotearoa that to move from Te Aotearoa to Te Kore, it often happens because maybe something happens that kind of snaps you out of that state of feeling quite unconscious, and you're just kind of going through the motions to moving into a state of reflection. And it might be something that happens to you, or it could be something like losing a job, or having a program be cut, or it might be that you realize that things just aren't working anymore, and you actually need to move into that state of reflection to start to consider what are the deeper things that are going on within my project. So we are now going to help to facilitate that movement between Te Aotearoa and Te Kore. And to do that, we like to use these karakia, and these karakia were written by Charisma Rangipuna to help us to make those transitions. So I will do the karakia now, and then we'll move into Te Kore. So nā Te Aotearoa ko Te Kore. Tokona Te Aotearoa kia tū, tokona Te Aotearoa kia ora, tukuna Te Aotearoa kia moe, tukuna Te Aotearoa kia tipu, kia tukutuku anō ai Te Aotearoa, nau mai Te Kore, ka pau Te Kore, hui e tā iki e.
Well, welcome to Te Kore. So as we shift around and move into this phase of Te Kore, we're now going to be going into a bit more of a reflective piece. So as we mentioned earlier, Te Kore is our space of sort of insights and getting a deeper understanding of what's going on and what we're doing. And so we talk about Te Kore as being our realm for seeking, reflecting, and understanding. And so often for us, Te Kore is about digging into sort of the whakapapa of what's going on and digging into the sort of deeper understandings. And so if Te Aotearoa is sort of going broad on the current state and getting a breadth of understanding, Te Kore is really about going deep. And so for this next piece, we have another reflection, and your partai for this is to reflect on what got you here. So how do you feel about what has been done so far? Are there any red flags? Are there any opportunities? What space do you occupy? And what does the surrounding context tell us? What is it that you really want? And so we really want you to sort of describe your thoughts and feelings and desires. So when you're ready, thinking about that kaupapa you talked about and wrote about in Te Aotearoa, grab a post-it and start writing. Cool. So hopefully you've managed to get out some of those thoughts, feelings, and desires and developed a bit of a deeper understanding of what's going on. So from this realm of Te Kore, our next shift is into a sort of imagining space, into Te Pō. And so as Alice mentioned, karakia is one of those things we really like to do to shift. And so we will go over to our transitional karakia, and I'll read this out and then we'll shift. So nā Te Kore ko Te Pō, tokona Te Kore kia tū, tokona Te Kore kia ora, tukuna Te Kore kia moe, tukuna Te Kore kia tupu, kia tukutuku anō ai Te Kore, nau mai Te Pō, ka pau Te Pō, hui e, tā iki e.
Ka pai, welcome to Te Pō. Te Pō is our realm of imagining, dreaming and making. So Te Pō literally means the night. So it's the space that we get to dream about the future. So in this realm, we want you to imagine what that future is. So we want you to imagine success. So when you think about what you're doing, we want you to consider what is the best possible outcome you can imagine. How good could it be? What could this new situation look or sound or feel like? And in theory, maybe how could you go about creating that new future? And we find in this exercise, it can be really helpful to use if and then sentences. So by that, I mean something like, if I support my whānau to learn te reo Māori, we will be able to pass the language on to our mokopuna. So if then, and that's a nice way to kind of begin to imagine success. So again, go ahead, grab a post-it note and start to note some of those things down in terms of what you imagine or dream about for the future. So again, we're going to now make the transition from te pō to te ao marama. And we find that the shift between te pō and te ao marama can be difficult because it really it takes taking kind of a leap of faith to send those dreams out into reality. So in te pō, you're in the space of dreaming, and then te ao marama is making that shift into turning those dreams into reality. So it's time for us to make this shift now. Again, we're going to do the karakia and then move into te ao marama. So nā te pō ko te ao marama. Tokona te pō kia tū, tokona te pō kia ora. Tukuna te pō kia moe, tukuna te pō kia tupu, kia tukutuku anō ai te pō, no mai te ao marama, ka pou te ao marama, hui e tā iki e.
Well, welcome to our realm, te ao marama. So as we talked about, te ao marama is that new world of light and life. And so this is our realm we talk about being for implementing, achieving, and celebrating. So te ao marama being that world of light, it's where we begin to see things more clearly, and we can access that wisdom of the past and the understanding we formed in our other realms. And from there, we use this to determine what is needed to create a new and better future. So for this last exercise, we want you to sort of think about the steps needed to implement your vision from te pō. So as you can see there, we're talking about practical actions. So what practical actions do you need to take now to create success? So what now, what next, who else needs to be involved? And we find that a really sort of good way to talk about this is considering what needs to happen first, next, and what your sort of last action will be. So when you're ready, grab a post-it note and begin to write down some of those next steps to turn your ideas from te pō into reality. Awesome. Looks like lots of you have lots of actions to do, and no doubt will be busy for a wee bit completing those. So as we've done so far, karakia is going to be our next piece to begin to transition into te ao tūro again and complete our cycle. And so, as we talked about, over time, the sort of innovations of today will likely become the challenges of the next generation. And Te Korekoreka as a kawa reminds us of that constant cycle. And so we're going to bring ourselves back to te ao tūro and do so using the karakia. So nā te ao marama ko te ao tūro. Tokona te ao marama kia tū, tokona te ao marama kia ora. Kia puta ai tātou ki te whaiao ki te ao marama. Ki te ao tūro e tū nei, ti hei mauri ora. So, thank you for coming on this journey through Te Korekoreka with us. Hopefully, we were able to unpack some things for you, and hopefully you found Te Korekoreka as being really useful for you. So as we mentioned, there is this cycle to Te Korekoreka, and we find that this process of moving around these realms between new ideas and potentials, and the fact that those ideas may no longer be fit for purpose, helps us to continue to develop and evolve. And so that sort of brings us to an end, and I'll pass over to Alice to sort of close us off.
Awesome. So we've run out of time, but if you do have any pātai, we potentially have about a minute to answer them. So feel free to put anything in the chat. But if not, we just want to acknowledge everyone and just remind you that there is a Te Korekoreka website, so it's tekorekoreka.co.nz. What's on the website is similar to what we've done today, but it has videos for each realm that can kind of help you if you'd like to use them to experience that realm. And we also have our Tokona Te Raki website, which is maorifeatures.co.nz. And otherwise, feel free to, if you can't find things on the website that you're interested in, then feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on LinkedIn, or we can make sure that Judy has our email addresses. What kind of timeframes can you do this process over? Anything. So we find that it could be used for like a whole design process. So you might spend heaps of time with a group in Te Aotearoa where you actually unpack the current state for a really, really long time. Or it could be a really fast process like you saw today. So it could be used to actually shape up like a really long-term project. And we actually do use it in that way where we do say Te Aotearoa for 6 months and then Te Kore for 6 months. Otherwise, ka nui te mihi kia koutou katoa. I'll pass it back over to Judy to close us off otherwise, but thank you so much, everyone. We've loved having you here and hope you enjoyed today.
Kia ora koroa. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that, and I just really appreciate the karakia that goes moving between the different spaces. That just helps to recenter, refocus, and I found that awesome. And I love the prompts that you provided there as well. Alice, I just wanted to ask a question as well. There's a question through there, but also just in terms of if people are interested in maybe engaging with Te Korekoreka, they can contact you. But do you have anything to say too about like the I guess Creative Commons or uses of the kawa?
Yeah, sure. So the kind of ask or message that we have is on our website. So on I think it's the page that's about the origins of Te Korekoreka, right down the bottom, there's a message about cultural usage, and it really just talks through the fact that there's kind of different experiences people will have with this, but everything that's there online is already out in the public domain, and you can use it, and we encourage you to use it. But if you have any kind of concerns or want to know more about those boundaries, then you're welcome to get in touch with us.